Good morning, friends. And today's story is something most people didn't see coming. Sweden's Loki system, yes, Loki, has just completed its first real NATO combat deployment in Poland. And this wasn't some quiet test. This system was actively protecting a critical logistics hub, the kind that keeps weapons flowing into Ukraine. That means real pressure, real threats, real drones in the sky. And here's the part that's changing everything. Because of Ukraine, the entire way Nordic countries think about drone warfare has shifted. Suddenly, small, cheap drones aren't just a nuisance, they're one of the biggest battlefield threats. And now, after Loki proved itself in a live environment, countries across Europe are all asking the same question. How fast can we get this system? Now, let's slow it down for a second, Fika style. My Swedish friends already smiling, you know what I'm talking about. That moment where you pause, grab a coffee, maybe something sweet, and just breathe. Because what Sweden has done here didn't happen overnight. It's actually the result of years, decades of quiet, smart development. Sweden didn't wake up one day and decide to build a counter-drone system. They were already building the pieces long before the world realized how important this would become. Take Saab, for example. They've been working in the background, developing technologies that didn't seem flashy at the time, but now they fit together like a perfect puzzle. First, the Giraffe radar family. This isn't new. Saab has been refining it since the 1970s, but the latest version, the Giraffe 1X, is where things get serious. It's a compact, highly mobile 3D radar that can track aircraft, detect low-flying drones, and support ground-based air defense, all at the same time. In simple words, it sees everything that matters, even the small, fast, low-altitude threats that traditional systems often miss. Then comes the muscle, the Trackfire remote weapon station. This is not your typical gun setup. It's stabilized, remotely operated, and incredibly precise. It can mount machine guns, grenade launchers, even missiles. And here's the key. It was already built, already tested, already exported before drones became the biggest threat on modern battlefields. Sweden didn't need to rush and invent something new. They already had a weapon that could be adapted instantly to take down drones. And then the invisible layer, electronic warfare. This is where things get really interesting, because modern drone defense isn't just about shooting targets out of the sky. It's about confusing them, jamming them, cutting their communication links, and sometimes even taking control of them. Sweden has been investing in electronic warfare quietly for years, building systems that can detect signals, disrupt them, and dominate the invisible battlefield where drones actually operate. So when you put all of this together, radar that sees everything, weapons that can hit anything, and electronic warfare that can shut everything down, you don't just get a system, you get an ecosystem. That's what Loki really is. Not a single machine, but a complete counter-drone architecture that was ready, just waiting for the moment the world realized it needed it. And that moment came in Ukraine. Because what we're seeing there isn't future warfare, it's happening right now. Swarms of drones, constant surveillance, sudden attacks, and traditional air defense systems? Too expensive, too slow, too focused on bigger targets. That's why Loki matters. It's designed for the real fight, not the old one. So now, as NATO countries watch what happened in Poland, they're not just impressed, they're concerned. Because if you don't have something like Loki, you're exposed. And Sweden, without trying to lead this space, may have just become NATO's most important player in counter-drone warfare. But here's the bigger question, and I want you to think about this. If small, smart, integrated systems like Loki can change the battlefield this quickly, what does the next 5 years look like? And before we go deeper into that, take a second, hit like, subscribe, because more than 98% of you are watching without subscribing. And trust me, the next part of this story only gets more intense. Now, here's the part that really explains why Sweden was ready for this moment, long before anyone else. Sweden has been investing heavily in electronic warfare for decades, and if you just look at a map, it makes perfect sense. During the Cold War, Sweden was sitting right in one of the most sensitive locations in the world, right between NATO forces and the Soviet Northern Fleet. That meant one thing. They had to survive in an environment where signals could be jammed, communications could be cut, and enemies could appear with very little warning. So Sweden didn't just build weapons, they built awareness, they built resilience, and most importantly, they built the ability to fight in the invisible domain, the electronic battlefield. None of these systems were originally designed to stop drones. They were built to counter advanced aircraft, missiles, and electronic threats from a superpower. But then Ukraine happened, and everything changed overnight. Saab looked at the battlefield, looked at their own technology, and realized something powerful. They didn't need to invent a brand new system from scratch. They already had everything. A radar that could see small targets, a weapon system that could hit them, and electronic warfare tools that could jam and disrupt them. So they asked a very simple question. What if we just connect it all? And that's exactly what Loki is. Not a single weapon, not a single sensor, but a smart, integrated system where every piece talks to each other in real time. The radar detects the drone, the system decides the best response, and either jams it, confuses it, or destroys it, all within seconds. That's the power of integration. That's the real breakthrough. And then comes one of the most fascinating parts of this entire story. The return of a legend. The Bofors 40mm gun. Yes, a weapon that first entered service back in 1934. Let that sink in. This gun was already in use before World War II even began, and today, in 2026, it's still being used to shoot down modern drones in Ukraine. That sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Because while technology evolves, some designs are just so effective, they never become obsolete. They just get upgraded. Over the decades, the Bofors system has been improved again and again. Better barrels, faster loading systems, modern targeting, digital fire control, but the core idea remains the same. A reliable, fast-firing anti-aircraft gun that simply works.
So imagine this, a drone built with modern electronics flying over the battlefield, and it gets taken down by a system whose roots go back nearly 90 years, but upgraded, modernized, and now connected into a smart network like Loki. That's not outdated, that's evolution. Sweden didn't throw away what worked. They improved it, adapted it, and plugged it into the future. For a younger audience, think of it like this. This isn't just old hardware surviving. This is a system that understood its purpose so well, it keeps getting stronger with every generation. It's like taking something classic and giving it modern intelligence. And now, mounted on mobile platforms like the Tridon Mk2, this 40mm gun becomes part of a highly flexible, fast-moving defense system that can be deployed exactly where it's needed. And that's why this matters so much. Because Loki isn't just about high-tech innovation, it's about smart integration of everything Sweden has built over decades. Old meets new, hardware meets software, kinetic power meets electronic warfare. And together they create something that is perfectly suited for today's battlefield. So when you see reports of drones being taken down in Ukraine using Swedish systems, understand what you're really looking at. You're not just seeing a gun fire. You're seeing decades of strategy, engineering, and preparation coming together at exactly the right time. And now, as NATO countries watch this play out, they're realizing something important. This isn't just Sweden helping Ukraine. This is Sweden quietly showing the future of air defense. Now, you might be wondering, why is someone like Mark Carney even part of this conversation? All right, I'm not even gonna lie. I may or may not have a bit of an American-style crush on Canada's head honcho, but we'll save that story for another day. Let's get back to what really matters, because this is where Sweden's so-called accidental superpower status actually starts to make sense. When you look at Loki, don't think of it as just one system. Think of it as the foundation, the base layer of something much bigger. Saab, working with Sweden's Defense Procurement Agency, FMV, and the Swedish Air Force, did something that almost never happens in defense projects. They moved fast, really fast. They compressed the entire evaluation and development cycle into just 84 days. That's insane in a world where most systems take years, sometimes decades, to even reach testing. And what came out of those 84 days wasn't a fixed product. It was a modular architecture built around 3 core pieces: the Giraffe 1X radar, the Trackfire remote weapon station, and a suite of electronic warfare tools. But the real power is in one word: modular. because modular means flexibility. It means you're not locked into one setup. You can plug in new sensors, swap out effectors, upgrade software, and evolve the system without starting from zero. The Loki that was deployed isn't the same Loki that came back. Every exercise, every real-world deployment feeds data back into the system, and the next version gets smarter, faster, more effective. It's like the system is learning in real time. And here's what makes this even more powerful. NATO gave Loki something most defense systems never get at this stage, a real operational environment before it's fully mature. Usually, systems are tested in controlled ranges, far from real threats. But Loki? It was deployed to Malbork Air Base in Poland from April to September 2025, protecting a logistics hub that was actively supporting Ukraine. That's not a simulation. That's a location Russia would absolutely want to disrupt. That means the threat wasn't theoretical. Drones were a real possibility every single day. So Loki didn't just get tested, it got validated under pressure. And that kind of feedback is priceless. It's why Sweden was confident enough to plan full implementation across its wartime units by the end of 2025. Because when a system proves itself in the real world, not just in theory, everything changes.
Now, here's where things get even more interesting, because Loki didn't stay just Swedish for long. During field testing on Gotland, Saab started integrating sensors from across the Nordic region. Denmark's MyDefense brought in passive detection systems. Estonia's Marduk technologies added electro-optical sensors. Norway's Squarehead contributed acoustic sensors that can literally hear drones before you even see them. And all of this was combined with the 40mm Tridon gun system from BAE Systems. What started as a Swedish solution quickly became something much bigger, a shared Nordic defense ecosystem. Different countries, different technologies, all plugged into the same modular architecture. That's not just cooperation, that's the beginning of a regional network where each country contributes its strength into a unified system. And then there's Nimrix. This is the part most people outside the counter-drone world haven't fully grasped yet. Because while Loki handles detection, tracking, and coordination, Nimrix is the sharp edge, the hard kill option. It's a tiny missile, less than 1 meter long, weighing under 3 kilograms. That's incredibly small for something this capable. But don't let the size fool you. It's designed to take out drones with precision. It uses an infrared seeker, which means it can track heat signatures, follow maneuvering targets, and stay locked even if the drone tries to evade. And with a range of around 5 kilometers, it gives operators a fast, reliable way to eliminate threats before they get close. So now, when you step back and look at the full picture, you start to see what Sweden has actually built. Loki isn't just a system, it's a platform. A constantly evolving network that combines radar, weapons, electronic warfare, and now even international sensors into one unified defense architecture. It learns, it adapts, and it grows stronger with every deployment. And that's why this matters, because this isn't just about stopping drones today. This is about building a system that can keep up with whatever comes next.
Now, here's where this story takes a serious turn, because this isn't just smart engineering. This is smart manufacturing. The Nimrix missile, the one we just talked about, is built with a 3D printed airframe. And that's not some flashy marketing trick. That changes everything. Because when you 3D print key parts of a missile, you can produce them faster, cheaper, and most importantly, you can redesign them quickly. And in a world where drones are evolving almost every month, that speed matters. You're no longer stuck waiting years to upgrade a system. You can test, adjust, improve, and roll out a new version while the threat is still changing. That's the kind of flexibility modern warfare demands. Saab plans to deliver the first Nimrix units by the end of 2026, but the real goal here is very clear. Fill the gap that nobody else has solved yet. Right now, you have guns on one side, cheap, close range, but limited. And on the other side, you have systems like Patriot missiles, extremely capable, but incredibly expensive. There's a missing middle layer, and that's exactly where Nimrix fits. Imagine a small battery of just 9 to 12 Nimrix missiles. Within seconds, it can engage a swarm of drones at around 2,000 meters. Fast, precise, and cost-effective. That last part is critical, because modern drone warfare isn't just about capability, it's about affordability at scale.
You can't shoot down a $10,000 drone with a $1 million missile and expect to win in the long run. It doesn't work. Saab understands that. They're designing Nimrix to be financially sustainable, so countries can actually afford to fight repeated drone attacks without burning through their budgets. Now stack everything together and look at the full architecture. At the base, you have Loki, the brain of the system. It connects everything. The Giraffe radar detects threats early. Electronic warfare systems try to jam or disrupt them before they even get close. If that fails, Trackfire steps in for close-range defense with precise kinetic fire. And then Nimrix sits in the middle layer, ready to take out targets before they reach critical distance. Detection, disruption, destruction. A complete chain from first contact to final kill. And the most important part? These aren't theoretical systems. Most of these components already exist, already work, and are either in production or very close to it.
And here's the truth that changes everything. Drone warfare is no longer a niche problem. It's an industrial contest. It's about who can produce, deploy, and sustain systems at scale. Not just who has the most advanced technology, but who can actually afford to keep fighting. And Sweden, without planning it this way, has built exactly the kind of system that fits this new reality. Now, zoom out for a second, because this isn't just about Sweden anymore. This is about NATO. Sweden officially joined NATO in March 2024, and unlike most new members, it didn't just bring troops or geography. It brought something far more valuable, a working, field-tested counter-drone architecture at the exact moment NATO realized it didn't have one. That gives Sweden influence, real influence, because when everyone needs a solution, the country that already has one becomes very important, very quickly. And the signals are already there. Procurement deals are starting to line up. A $1.5 billion Trackfire order, with delivery scheduled from 2026 to 2028, shows this isn't just curiosity, it's commitment. Countries are buying in. They're investing in this ecosystem. And then, on March 6, 2026, Saab signed a collaboration agreement with the Kyiv School of Economics, focusing on UAV and microelectronics research. That's a big move, because what Saab is doing here is locking in a direct feedback loop with the most active drone warfare environment in the world, Ukraine. Every lesson learned on that battlefield can now flow directly into Sweden's defense industry, turning real combat experience into rapid upgrades. So when you ask who's going to lead NATO's counter-drone future, don't just look at who has the biggest budget, because this isn't about spending the most money. It's about building the smartest system, adapting the fastest, and staying ahead of a threat that never stops evolving. And right now, Sweden is doing exactly that.
And here's the reality most people are just starting to understand. The countries that will dominate counter-drone warfare aren't the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones who figured out the system first, got it into the field early, and started collecting real-world data while everyone else was still stuck in meetings, writing reports, and running procurement studies. That's exactly what Sweden did. They figured out the architecture, they deployed it, and now they're learning from real operations, not simulations. Every drone detected, every engagement, every success, every limitation, it's all feeding back into the system, making the next version better. And the most interesting part? None of this was planned like some grand strategy. It just happened because Sweden already had the right pieces ready when the world suddenly needed them. You can almost picture the scene in Stockholm right now. Some senior official at Saab or inside Sweden's defense circles, sitting with a strong cup of coffee, looking at incoming orders and thinking, "We didn't expect this." Because the honest truth is, Sweden never set out to become NATO's counter-drone powerhouse. They built radars because they needed situational awareness. They built remote weapon systems because those are useful across many missions. They invested in electronic warfare because of their long history dealing with Russian signal activity across the Baltic region. Each piece had its own purpose. Each system was built for a different reason. But then Ukraine changed everything. Suddenly, drones became the most urgent threat on the battlefield. Suddenly, NATO realized it didn't have a complete answer. And suddenly, countries across Europe, especially those close to Russia, started asking the same question. How do we defend ourselves against something that is cheap, fast, and everywhere at once? That's when Sweden's shelf of technologies turned into something much bigger. The radar, the weapons, the electronic warfare tools, they all came together. The shelf became a stack.
The stack became a full system, and that system became a product family. And now look at what's happening. That product family is being deployed in Ukraine. It's being ordered through multi-year contracts. It's being integrated into NATO operations, and it's being studied closely by defense ministries across the alliance, all trying to understand what real, scalable drone defense actually looks like. Not in theory, but in practice. Not in limited tests, but at industrial scale, where you can actually afford to keep fighting day after day. That's why this moment matters. Because sometimes power doesn't come from planning. It comes from being ready when the world changes. Sweden didn't plan to lead this space, but it was prepared when the opportunity came. And that's what turned it into what I would call an accidental superpower in counter-drone warfare. So now the question shifts. It's no longer about what Sweden has built, it's about what Sweden does next. Because if this is just the beginning, then the next few years could completely reshape how modern air defense works across NATO. And if you found this deep dive valuable, take a second, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, because we're going to keep breaking down the technologies that are shaping modern warfare, one story at a time. The pace of change right now is incredible, and trust me, we're just getting started.